All right. Hello and welcome everyone to another author spotlight where we dive into the stories, wisdom, and experiences of incredible authors who are making an impact in their communities and beyond. I am your host, Nicolette Halladay. And for those of you, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Nicolette Halladay, and I have Stephanie Olivo with me. Did I say your last name right? Sorry, I'm like,
it's okay.
People's last names wrong.
Yeah, I know. Everyone always says Olivo. It's Olivo, but it doesn't matter. I mean,
Okay.
I've heard worse.
Olivo.
You're doing good. Yeah,
good. I'm just gonna make sure we're showing up where we need to be. Let's see.
You gotta love technology these days.
Yes,
you know, you have so many things and so much access to put it here, put it there, and you gotta press the button.
There's a lot that goes on behind something like this, right?
It does, for sure.
Which you're very familiar with because of your podcast, and we're going to dig into that a little bit. But I want to introduce you to our audience. Stephanie is a Tampa native, entrepreneur, a realtor who has turned unimaginable tragedy into mission of healing and empowerment. After the devastating loss of her husband to suicide and her stepson to an overdose, she channeled her grief in writing, launching her blog, Discontinued Now What, to openly share her journey. She continued to share as a contributing author to the Voyage and the Return, The Path to Self-Discovery. And she offers a raw and powerful glimpse into the day her late husband took his life. Seeking healing beyond traditional therapy, Stephanie found solace in Reiki and meditation practices that have since become central to her work in supporting women navigating life after loss. Through her writing and advocacy, she sheds light on the complexity of grief, addiction, and mental illness from an outsider's perspective, offering hope to those who feel lost. Welcome, Stephanie. So good.
Thank you so much. Yes, Nicolette, thank you so much for having me. This is really quite a pleasure, you know, and it's been a minute since we've gotten together.
It has. That's one of my favorite part about doing this interview series is getting to reconnect with authors who, you know, life gets busy, things happen. And so getting to catch up and really shine a spotlight on what you're doing. Stephanie and I were talking a little bit before we went live, and how right now is so important for us to be sharing our voices and to continue to share our stories, to imprint the legacy and the life that we are wanting to see. And so I'm so excited to have you here. Like I mentioned in the introduction, Stephanie was a contributing author to The Voyage and the Return. I always like to show it off.
Yes.
And we will make sure to add the link for anyone who wants to check out Stephanie and the other contributors chapters and really dig in. But I want to start off. So, you know, I'm curious to hear your journey. Kind of what inspired you to say yes to joining the Voyage and the Return? What was kind of like, okay, yeah, I'm doing this, and made you raise?
Yeah. I didn't raise my hand. I'm going to be quite honest with you. I was, you know, as many people are, and especially, you know, and I'm going to say women because I think it's a lot of us that we get a little bit kind of nervous about sharing our story and the intimacy of sharing something. So really the vulnerability of putting pen to paper, you know, speaking about it to somebody, telling your story and stuff is one thing verbally, you know, telling your story and putting it pen to paper. I feel, I'm very old school. I'm like, that's there forever. Like everybody can see it.
Yes. And in a book, right?
And in a book, you know,
very like solidified, legitimate. Yeah,
for sure. But you know, the funny part is it's the same thing with a podcast. A podcast lives forever, just like a book lives forever. But my thought process was a little bit different. And, you know, I had been talking to Jamie. She's also one of the contributors, and she's also my Reiki master. And I had been working with Jamie. I got introduced to her from a friend of mine. because I was, going to, different types of therapy, group therapy, one-on-one therapy. And it just honestly, and I've come to the realization that my whole nervous system, I don't think was truly ready to be in a space like that, sharing stories and really kind of absorbing that stuff. I didn't know that what an empath was, and that apparently is what I resonate with very much so.
Sure.
And hearing other people's stories and stuff like that at a very early stage of losing my husband, losing my stepson, and it was very tough for me. So trying a different mode of therapy was really, really, I think, important. And somebody seeing on the outside perspective, and I think we discussed that too, is kind of, somebody else sees something in you and seeing what's going on with you and kind of leads you in a way and kind of helping you, hey, maybe this is what you need. Maybe this is what you need. And I honestly think that's why I started the podcast, but I never really was thinking about starting the podcast and really writing. After writing the chapter in the book, I was like, there probably are so many people out there, men, women, kids that have lost a parent, who have lost a spouse, who have lost a partner, to suicide, to addiction.
Absolutely.
And their stories are not really being heard. I was like, if I can be like a very small part of, helping somebody kind of navigate towards that, because there's an ugly side of grief, and there's also a really beautiful bright side of grief. And I want to also kind of go back to the word group. I always call it an umbrella, because it is not just when somebody passes. I think it's more of, you think you're going to have a life with somebody or something, a career or what have you.
Yes.
And when that is cut to an end, if you will, or that is no longer, you're like, okay, what do I do now? Like, what is my life without this person, without this job, without this thing, or whatever that is for you? You are grieving.
Yes.
It's a different type of grief. And there's so many, types of grief. And I think a lot of people always think grief, death, and it's not, it's not always like that.
Absolutely. I think that is so true. And I had an interview with another author last week, and she was saying something very similar, that, the grief is the end of an identity, in a way, the vision of a life that you had once like dreamt into, and having to mourn that. And so it can show up in like different ways. It can show up in divorce, or loss of a career, or a death by a loved one. There's a lot of ways, honestly, that it can show up, and it puts us in this really vulnerable state of like kind of like going back to your blog and podcast, discontinue, now what? And so absolutely so true. And so writing can be really, like you mentioned, it can be such a personal and transformative process, just the writing process. And then the publishing process and being vulnerable and putting it out there is like another level. How has being part of the book and the community of authors impacted you?
And it's kind of funny. So I always say, I don't feel like an author. I don't know why. I don't know if it just doesn't feel real.
Sure.
But it's like, like my story, a little portion of my story is out there. My name is on a book. I'm in with this group of women who have also shared their stories, and we have a book out there. For me, it's been really helpful in terms of, kind of, instead of telling the story at length or anything like that, I give people a little bit of a glimpse, and some people have heard my story, some new friends and stuff. I now live in Atlanta. So I am a Tampa native. I now live in Atlanta, or Decatur, now for almost 2 years. And when I see somebody that I know has gone through not a similar situation, but pretty tough situation, I literally give them a copy of the book. I was like, hey, listen, I think this will be really cool for you to read. There's a whole bunch of different stories in there. It's not just about, myself, or it's not just about death. It's just about basically like I say a lot, it's about that life that you thought you were going to have, and something happens and it shifts you into a different direction.
Yeah.
And I think after writing that chapter and reading everybody else's stories, I was like, okay, there's something here. I just didn't know what that something was.
Mm-hmm.
And I have always been told that for whatever reason, speaking is my thing. I don't know what it is. I don't know how it happened, but I was like, okay, yeah. So I was like, okay, I don't know how to start a podcast. I don't know what an RSS feed. I don't know what stuff that I need. You know what I mean? It's like all the little things, right? And I said, and literally just one day to the next, I said, you know what, screw this. I'm just going to do it and see what happens. And I think that's really what's really, really important, especially when you don't feel ready. Just do it.
Do it.
If you don't think anybody wants to hear your story, write it anyway, because somebody out there, even if it's just for yourself, if you're writing this book for yourself, or the story for yourself, or this poem, whatever that is, it's for you, honestly. It's not for everybody else.
It's true. It's for you and those that are meant to connect with it. Mm-hmm. I always say that when people are getting in their head about writing their chapter, I'm like, the words that you share are the words that someone else is going to need to receive, and you have to trust it. But I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, if you don't feel ready, do it. Because I think there is so many times in life that we can be like, oh, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to have a family yet. I'm not ready to start business. I'm not ready to write the book or start the podcast or whatever it is. And the truth is, you will never be ready if you wait.
Correct. Yeah. My mom always said that to me too. She's like, so do you want to have kids? I was like, I don't know. She's like, well, I'm just going to tell you one thing. I said, what's that? She goes, you're never ready to have kids.
Yep.
So just do it. You feel like you want to, just do it. I was like, okay. So that just do it kind of mentality is
it's true
to me for a long time.
It's so true. The act of doing it will get you ready. You will be prepared, because it puts things in motion that you have to then respond to, which we can get in our heads about a lot of things. And honestly, a lot of those things that you think, oh my gosh, this isn't ready, they're probably never going to get done, and it's fine. It's okay. You'll work it out. You find the things that are actually more like the most important things, and you focus on that. So you're
going to learn along the way. That's the beauty of life. We're always constantly learning. If we honestly, and I hear this with a lot of entrepreneurs with big major companies, they said, if I knew all that it entailed to run my business, I would have never started. I said, yeah.
Yes. If I knew what I was going to have to go through, I would have scared myself out of it. But the thing is, this is something that I talk about a lot, is worrying about something and dealing with something. Actually, usually dealing with it is easier, because worrying, there's nowhere for it to go. You have nothing to move through. And so the what ifs can make you crazy. But then if you're just faced with it, it's like you just kind of move through it. You deal with the things that come up. So good. So we often don't realize the power of our stories. And I think you kind of touched on this earlier, but what message do you hope, or did you hope, that readers would take away from your chapter when you wrote it? It's been a couple of years. So
honestly, I wasn't sure how to, because it's for lack of a better term, it was one chapter in the book. And I was like, okay, how can I be most impactful in just basically kind of giving the story without kind of all the details and all that stuff. You have like
a limited space to be able to, so you couldn't go into all of it, right?
For sure. And I don't think I was ready to go into all of it. So I said, okay, what is the best way to kind of give this story and kind of put it out there, but also not I guess minimize it, for lack of a better term. You know what I mean? Because it was such a big, it was a big part of my life.
It deserves, and also kind of lead people into the next thing, right?
For sure. So that's why I decided, I was like, let me just, discuss like that day of how everything kind of went down and how I felt and all that stuff. And as somebody who has never experienced someone close to them who had passed through suicide, or someone close who had passed from, overdose or drug addiction and stuff like this. I was literally an outsider. That's really how I felt. And it took me a long time for me to really acknowledge that it had nothing to do with me. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with. And that's why I think I wanted to start discussing different things on the podcast, not only grief, but also different methods of healing and journaling. I discuss journaling a lot. So that is also, your writing here. And it's important to I think, give context and give, different ideas to people, because we don't know what's going to stick with us. If going to speaking to somebody once a week works for you, amazing.
Yeah.
If, yoga works for you, if meditation, if gardening, whatever that, and I want to say this too. For me, I've learned that meditation is also an umbrella, whatever works for you and whatever you're going to actually practice, whether it's journaling, whether it's writing, gardening, whatever that is, that helps you kind of step out of the daily grind and all the things and all the thoughts in your head, and it really kind of helps you calm down, then that's your meditation practice, whatever that is for you,
Good point. Yes. I think it's so valuable to say, like, therapy works for a lot of people. It might not work for some people, and that there's other healing methods out there and ways that we can connect back to ourselves and others, which is just such a big piece of the healing journey. And so really finding it, and sometimes it means trying on some different, experimenting and kind of seeing what is gonna kind of bring you that peace. So I love that you share that, because I think it's so valuable and something that I know, and a lot of people in like this wellness space, kind of spiritual mentorship. But I think once you get outside of that bubble, it feels a little mysterious to people.
For sure.
Yeah. So what made you decide to kind of go down that route initially? Was it just kind of like a connection you felt, or spark, or what kind of triggered that?
I think it was really just a connection, and having people tell their stories. And as uncomfortable as sometimes it may be, and even myself, there's some days that, I don't want to share my story. And some days I really want to, because I want, and it's gotten better through the years, and speaking about it and discussing it and stuff, and different things and different memories and stuff that I have. And I think it's really important, because I think that's the legacy that we leave with whoever we touch, whoever we're, exposed to, our family, our kids, our nieces or nephews, and that's one of the things that I think is so important, especially when we have somebody who has passed through suicide or through addiction, who's no longer with us, is telling those stories. A lot of people feel sometimes that they don't want to talk to me about, a thought that they had, or a memory that they had, about Dirk or about Kai and stuff like that, about my mom, my grandmother. And I'm like, no, these are the stories that will live on. Like, stories live on. So keep telling the stories, keep talking about it, write them down, whatever it is, because, there's a lot of stories that even I heard with my dad about my mom that I never knew about. I was like, oh man, why didn't I know this before? But it was, maybe I always look at it, I was like, maybe I wasn't ready to hear it at that time. Sure. So whatever I hear now, and
like this treat that it's like, oh my gosh, I never knew that. Right. So you kind of add a little context. I think stories, obviously it's like, our stories and sharing like our own personal experience and our rituals and our practice, like it goes back to like like caveman times, like
yes, totally.
And it is such an important part of our existence. And I know that for my girls, whenever I'm telling them stories about their childhood or about my childhood or about my parents, like they'll pull up, right? They're like, what? Like, and they get so excited, and I can be sharing like a lesson in it without them even realizing it. And sometimes it's not even meant to be a lesson, but they get these takeaways, or just feeling more connected, or, having this better understanding. So I think stories, like regardless of the platform or the format that you choose to share it, like I just want to encourage anyone who's watching, if you have a story, like just share it. It's so
Yeah.
valuable. So I just wanted to put in that plug. So one last question about the book, and then I want to get into kind of more of the work that you're doing and your podcast and all of the good stuff. So what was your favorite part about contributing to the Voyage and the Return?
Honestly, to be amongst all the women, and having the conversations with them, and just really kind of touching on their stories and learning about a little bit more about them, because it's very easy to write a chapter and you just kind of turn it in, if you will, like school.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
having conversations with the ladies, and different things, and different also struggles that they were kind of having as well. I was like, yeah, I totally feel that way too. And having that nice, community of women, and just really supporting each other. I think that was the biggest thing, because it's not an easy thing, and not everybody is able to do it. I call it the pen to paper situation. It's easier to discuss it, and like you talk about it and then it's done.
Yeah.
But when you're actually telling a story, and you actually want to give your heart and your soul to this piece of material that's going to be out there, and you want it to say something. You want not only to represent your life in a good light, but it's also kind of, sometimes it's hard, and it's hard to take something that was so, you know devastating in our lives, and that goes not only for myself, for my entire family. I've had conversations with my dad, with my sister, and stuff like that, and my brother-in-law, and I was just like, whoa, I don't think I really recognized the effect that it had on so many people.
Wow.
So having that out there, and just writing, and being able to have a little bit of that community of like, yeah, we're all going through some really difficult things, or we had gone through some really difficult things, and we're all healing together. And I think this is also a portion of healing, is writing our stories into this. So I highly recommend it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
I think that camaraderie, and then
Yeah.
when you are sharing something so personal, doing it together,
Mhm.
feels less scary, right?
Yeah.
And then I think the other thing, especially when it comes to our personal stories, I've seen this happen with a few people actually who are writing a solo book, get caught in it and be like, no, I can't, and stop
Yeah.
it. And I think a multi-author book is like, yes, we see you, we understand, and we're still moving forward. So it really helps people see that through to completion,
Mhm.
so that they get to have that kind of, the reward of getting to put it out there and realizing, okay, that was scary, but I'm okay. I'm still good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And seeing the impact and the conversations that it starts, right?
For sure. For
Yeah.
sure. Definitely the conversations that it starts, like, I had no idea. I had no idea, you
Mm,
know, why didn't I learn about this sooner?
mm,
And there comes a time that you are wanting to share your story, willing to share your story. And sometimes it's not that day, and that's okay. But I think sharing our stories is so important, and however we share them, I think it's key.
yeah, absolutely. So, I know this was kind of a catalyst for you in continuing to share your story and interviewing other people and hearing their stories. So I want to move into
Excuse me.
for a minute. You're fine.
Hmm.
So you have taken your personal experience and transformed it into a platform for healing and connection. Can you share a little bit about the work that you do and who you serve?
Definitely. Yeah. I wanted to kind of, get my story out there, and kind of let people know that, like you said before, we're in a community, we're being seen. And I think that's what happens. A lot of us, we feel when certain things happen in our lives, or different experiences, we're like, I'm the only one that this is happening to. Who can I really talk to about this? Like,
Mm.
this is so crazy, out of the normal, quote unquote.
It can feel really isolating, right?
It feels very isolating, and I think that was really one of the reasons why I decided to, literally just do it, and just go out there and tell my story. And and have Jamie on the podcast. I've had, some of the other authors on the podcast and stuff. And I think it's important, not only to just, discuss grief, but also about different experiences that people have gone through that have now shifted their entire way of being, and doing things completely different because they're being called to do that, whatever that calling is. Somebody who I remember, he was working at General Motors, like very high up General Motors, pay was amazing. And he met a gentleman at a gym that owned some Fortune 500 company. And they were talking about certain things about his workout. He's an amputee. And the guy's like, he goes, "You're so inspiring." He goes, "Would you mind talking to my, sales team or whatever?" And that led to, he's a very now highly paid motivational speaker.
Oh,
and I had I had a chat with him the other day, actually a couple months ago, excuse me, had him on the podcast and stuff, told him the story kind of thing. He goes, "You need to write a book." I was like, "Actually, I wrote a chapter." He goes, "No, you need a whole book." And I was like, okay. And I heard that many times, and I was just like, I wasn't really truly ready, and I wasn't truly ready to write the chapter in the book, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But something was telling me, he's like, you just got to do it. You just got to do it. You just got to do it. Something was, talking in my ear. And I said, okay. And it wasn't scary. It was quite a great experience, and I said, okay, this is possible. This is possible.
Yeah.
You just have to, sit down and do it.
That's like the biggest, right? Anytime getting started is like the hardest thing when
that's definitely the hardest thing.
Always, right?
For sure. Yeah. And, and just kind of having that conversation, I said, I go, you know what? I know I'm on the right path. Wherever this podcast leads to is amazing. Even if it's just for me. And I'm happy with it. And I'm content with what I'm, putting out there in the world. I'm cool with that. You know what I mean? If it doesn't go, quote unquote, anywhere and all that stuff, it's not for everybody. It's for me. And I heard a really great quote. I'm probably butchering it, but Rick Rubin, he's a very big producer and stuff. He's like, I think what a lot of artists in general terms, a lot of artists think is that, are people going to like this? Yeah. He's like, for me as an artist, because I'm also an artist, he's like, for me, it's like, if I'm happy with it, I'm okay with it. I'm going to put it out there. And I was like, that is fantastic. That is great advice. Yeah. That is really great advice. Yeah.
Instead of trying to cater to because again, I think that can put us in a loop, and it really takes us away from ourselves. Right.
And then you're not happy with it anymore. You're not happy with creating that particular work. You're like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. It's not making me happy.
It will lead to burnout. And I think when we can, share our personal truths, our understanding, the wisdom that's coming through us, like all the things and all the ways, it brings us back closer to ourselves, which there is such a power in connecting deeply to who you are and feeling comfortable just being you. I talk about being authentic and connecting with your authentic self. And I think a lot of people are like, I don't even know what that means. Yeah. And until you start kind of experimenting and asking the questions and kind of unraveling the layers of is this mine? Is this some belief that was put on me? Why do I think this way? And really starting to kind of unravel, which I think happens in the writing and also in the podcast space, is we get closer to that. For sure. And I believe that when we can be our authentic selves is actually how we're impacting the world the most, is just by showing up as who we are and being okay with it and comfortable with that. So
for sure. And sometimes it's not easy, it's recognizing, okay, after everything happened with Dirk and Kai, I closed my business. I was doing medical device sales for 10 years. I was like, okay, what is it that makes me happy? I don't know. And I think trying to find that happy, quote unquote, if you will, I was looking a lot of that for external gratification, whether it was somebody else, another job, another this, whatever, another career. I was like, that's going to make me happy. That's going to make me happy. And, we're 7 years here after the fact. And I'm like, no, like everything that I need to make me happy is within me.
Yeah.
And having that recognition, it is so incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, that weight is lifted off of you because you're not searching for something else to
Yeah.
make you happy. And
Mm.
it's so insane. And I literally, this is probably like within the last few months, I'm like, what's going to make me happy and what's going to make me successful is me and nobody
Yes,
else.
exactly. Oh my gosh. I'm
So,
so glad. I'm so glad you had that kind of realization or deepening embodying of it. And I think it's like you said, it's not always easy, and
no.
sometimes it's like a fumbling process and
Mhm.
it's okay. All of that is okay in kind of connecting back to yourself. And so yeah, I love it. So writing in the Voyage and the Return and then launching your podcast, I want to give you an opportunity to kind of talk a little bit about your podcast. Disconnected, now what? Correct?
Discontinued, now what? Yeah.
Discontinued, now what?
Yeah.
Sorry.
But sometimes we feel disconnected, girl. I tell you
Disconnected,
what.
yeah. Discontinued, now what? Yes.
So we're available on all the platforms. So wherever you like to listen to your platform. So Spotify, Apple, iHeart, Audible, even. Yes. So we just discussed about different experiences that people have gone through that have maybe changed the trajectory of, where they thought they were going to go. And now where they're at. And I think that's why we called it Discontinued, Now What? So because I was in the medical field for so long, DC was discontinued. That medicine is discontinued. And
Mhm.
my sister actually came up with it because Dirk's name was Dirk Christian, DC. And that's
Oh.
what we used to kind of, call him. And she's like, yeah, you can call it discontinued. I was like, yeah, discontinued. Now what? Like, what am I going to do now? There's no handbook, there's no playbook. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
So that's why we, came up with the name and we've been running with it. And so far, so good because it has a lot of, context,
It does. I think it says it all.
Yeah.
So anyone who is curious, somewhere on their journey of finding who they are, if you've undergone some kind of loss, it can be anything. And sometimes we just lose ourselves in the busyness of life or just, going through the motions. Definitely check out Discontinued, Now What? I think you're going to get a lot out of it. So I have a couple more questions. So before we wrap up, what's one piece of encouragement you'd like to leave with the listeners today, whether they're navigating grief or considering sharing their story or just looking for some kind of inspiration?
For me, I've always worked on, I've been lately, now working on the way that I speak about grief. So for myself, I don't say loss anymore, even though I have said it in this interview, in this discussion. I try to say past, or because we're not losing a person, we are losing them physically. Yes, got it. But we learned so much, not only about them and their lives, but also about ourselves and how they affected our lives.
Yeah.
So I just kind of try to, mitigate some words and stuff like that. And that's something that I've been slowly working on and trying to kind of, because loss is such a, like, we lose them and then that's it. No, we learn so much from them, from that experience, what we were able to manage, after the fact,
who we become, like who we
become.
rise into. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, there's a loss, but then there's all the gain, which is, really probably hard to talk about, especially when you're right in the middle of it. But I think that's a powerful like switch on perspective is kind of revisiting kind of how you're viewing it. And that's super powerful.
Totally.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. Okay, Stephanie, thank you so much for sharing your story and your heart and your journey with us today. Your resilience and dedication to helping others find healing is truly inspiring. To everyone watching or listening, if you're ready to dive deeper into Stephanie's insights, be sure to grab a copy of The Voyage and the Return, The Path to Self-Discovery, to check out her chapter and the other contributors' chapters as well, and also follow her on her podcast, Discontinued Now What. I'll make sure to include that in the show notes along with her website. That's it for today's author spotlight. Stay tuned for more incredible interviews with authors as we courageously share their stories with the world. Thank you so much,
I
everyone.
appreciate you so much.